Hello, friends. Susan here. Sometimes I come to you in the morning, but I am feeling reflective this evening, so I wanted to come here and ask you a question. When was the last time you went to church? Do you go every Sunday or Saturday evening maybe? Has it been weeks since you went to church? Has it been months? When was the last time you went to church? Whenever that was, did you wonder if you would die that day? Yeah, that's what I just asked you. The last time you went to church, did you wonder if you would die that day from a terrorist activity, a hate crime against your religion? I wrote a long reflection yesterday before the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur started. I'm always reflective around this time. The Jewish calendar gives us many different times a year to be reflective, and also this is the beginning of the Jewish New Year, so we get a few times to end a year and start a new year. And in that, I said that I haven't really been oriented towards organized religion lately. If you know me and you know my story, my Judaism is caught up with my husband, whom I met in Israel when we were juniors in college. And from then till the time he died at 60, our Jewish lives together were integrated and aligned. So it's been hard for me to go to synagogue for the last couple of years. The few times I have gone, I just start crying. It happened at my cousin's wedding. My cousin Ab was sitting next to me, and all of a sudden I just started crying like hard. And she just quietly put her arm around me. And so I don't force myself to go a lot, but I do pray a lot, and I do have a deeper faith than I ever did before. I find my faith and my spirit and my spirituality in nature. And so I wrote that I probably would be spending today up on a mountain somewhere, which, as you know, I'm often found up on a mountain. But yesterday, last evening, I believe, I had a conversation with my nephew who is studying in Eastern Europe in Estonia. And he told me about going to synagogue there and how the rabbi speaks 4 languages, and he got the prayer book in English, even though my nephew speaks Russian now, but he doesn't speak Estonian, and he's not overly familiar with the service. So we were talking about it and talking about deep stuff, which is so great. All my nieces and nephews are willing to talk deep with me. And I thought about the fact that Zach went to synagogue across the land. And this morning I woke up, and the first thing in the morning, I was taking the dog out, and my neighbor told me about the people who were murdered at the synagogue in Manchester, England. Murdered at the synagogue for being Jews, praying at the place of worship. And so I ask you again, when was the last time you went to church? And when you went to church, whenever that was, did you wonder if you would die that day from a terrorist attack? Well, this morning at 8 a.m. my time, I found out about the murders, the stabbings. The few people ended up in the hospital, 2 people ended up dead. And I thought to myself, I'm going today. I thought to myself, thank God and bless the people who do maintain the organized religion. That was me for decades of my life. If you know me, I was a leader at our synagogue for decades. And so I did do my time there. And I know what it takes to make that happen and to run things and be in charge and deal with crises. I was president during 9/11, president of our synagogue during 9/11. And I thought how grateful I was that there are people who are still running synagogues across the world. And I made a decision, I'm going to go today to support them, even though I did pack my bag filled with tissues. I just decided that I would go. And my friends, I'll tell you the God's honest truth. I wrote to each of my daughters, I love you, in a text. And I knew that when I went to this synagogue here, where I live in the state of Arizona, that there could just as easily be a terrorist attack. Without a doubt in my mind, I knew that any synagogue in any country would be just as likely to have an attack as any other. There was nothing special about that synagogue in Manchester, England. It was just a synagogue with Jews praying on the single holiest day of the year. And I mean this with my full being. I made a decision that I was going to go today, and I knew it was unlikely. Was it though? How likely or unlikely would it be that this synagogue here in this corner of the world would be attacked? There virtually isn't a synagogue that doesn't have police, that didn't have police in front of it today. In fact, when I got here in town, there was a big police cruiser parked right in front. There were 2 police people, I don't know if they were men or women, in the police cruiser. Very prominent, very noticeable. But this has been going on for years. For years, we've had police outside the synagogue during the holiest days. Still in all, there was nobody checking the door, nobody checking at this place where I went, nobody checking for tickets. All Jews were allowed to walk in freely. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said, who are you? Where do you live? Are you a Jew? You know, what are you doing here? I just walked in confidently. I've been going to synagogue my whole life. And I walked in and took the prayer book and sat down. I could have been anyone. I could have had a gun with me. I could have had a bomb with me. I could have had a knife with me. The people were killed by stabbing today in Manchester. So I made a choice, a definite, intentional choice, that I was going to go today to be counted. Not just to be counted in the minyan, the group of people who come together to pray, but to be counted among the Jews who risked their lives today simply by going to synagogue to pray, to ask forgiveness of God for the sins which we have undoubtedly committed over the course of the entire year, to pray for a good year to come, and to pray in supplication to be written up in the book of life so that we may live well another year ahead. I was very reflective the whole time. I didn't feel unsafe. I wasn't nervous or scared, even while 100% I knew anything could happen here. If you're a parent of a school-age child at this point in the history of our country, I won't speak about other countries, I don't know about them. At this point in the history of our country, there's no parent of a school-age child who doesn't know that a shooting by a white man couldn't happen in their child's school. And yet, there's no changes to the laws. So I wanted to really come here and share my story with you, ask you to reflect deeply what you think about what I'm saying. Of course, we know there have been church killings. Obviously, there have been church killings, there have been mosque killings, there have been killings of different Christian denominations. Of course, I know that. I was just asking you how real that is for you every Sunday when you go to church. I'm happy to share the part of my story which is inspiration, where my 21-year-old nephew inspired his Aunt Susan, even though I'm the one who's been a practicing Jew and he doesn't know a lot of the prayers. He's not overly familiar with things. I talked him through a couple of things on the phone. Afterwards, he was asking me about this and that. And I messaged him later and I said, I want to thank you, and told him that he inspired me today. And by this part of the story, I want you to realize that whomever you are listening to this, we can learn from younger people around us. And if you are the younger people, we can learn from you. So, rock on. It's a new year for the Jewish people. 5,700 years we've had a direct line, an unbroken line, through pogroms and persecutions, through holocausts and terrorist attacks. Somehow the Jewish people have survived. One of the things I thought of today very distinctly was how afraid we are of people who are different from us. Jews have a very distinct practice. We use Hebrew, some use Yiddish, but we speak Hebrew. There are practices that we have that would be unfamiliar to you. Of course, you would have no way of knowing what we're talking about or what we're doing or why we're standing, why we're sitting, why we open the Holy Ark, why we take the Torah out, why we read it, all the things, what the responses are, etc. And today, even within Judaism, of course, there's different ways to practice. The practice is the same, but the tunes of the songs are different, the accents are different, etc. So you may not recognize everything when you go in, but you will recognize something if you grew up as I did, going to synagogue and taking our kids to synagogue every week. Then any synagogue that you go in, you're going to hear something that's going to be familiar to you, which is very cool. But if you're a stranger and you look and see what these other people are doing and it's strange, it might make you afraid of them. Just like I would be nervous in another culture seeing them do other cultural things. I believe it's part of what got us here to where we are today. The hate and division, the fear and fear-mongering about people who are other than us. It's being perpetrated now throughout the systems of our government, throughout the systems of our culture, in education and business and so on. And I reflected on this today at the synagogue I attended because they do it differently from the place where I was a member for like 25 years, and different from the place I grew up. Two long-term memberships, my earlier years and then my older teen years. And so I just know that this idea of the other and how it makes us nervous to see people doing things differently, speak differently, eat differently, pray differently, live differently, different customs, different practices, different belief systems. Somehow I think that we need to talk about this more. And this is why I come here and I talk about my Judaism. During the month of Elul, we just had, our Jewish practice is that for an entire month before the Jewish New Year holiday, we reflect deeply. The practice is an entire month of self-reflection to get you ready to go to hours and hours of synagogue services during Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. And then further, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there are 10 days. And these are where you go even deeper in reflection. And you begin to review the year that has gone by. And so it's been a time of great reflection. I've talked about many things on my timeline if you follow me, and I do this with intention to edify, just to share it with you in case you don't know it. Or if you do, if you are familiar, then you're welcome because on my timeline, you're going to see something that's familiar to you and comfortable to you. When you grow up as one of the tiniest minorities in the world, we are one of the tiniest minorities in the world. When you grow up as a minority, then usually you're subject to what others, the cultures of others, and not your own. And so you're not used to seeing things about yourself. So that's another reason I do that on my timeline, because I have that in common with some people, like my Mount Holyoke sisterhood, siblinghood. If you see someone with a Mount Holyoke College t-shirt, you're like, boom, immediately connected. If you see someone with a Star of David, a Jewish star, then you're immediately connected. Same with a cross. If you see someone with a cross, okay, there's different denominations and whatever, but you know you have that in common. Ironically, all the religions have a basis in common. There's some kind of faith, call it what you want, call the entity, I call it the, universal source of all that is. I call it God. You might call it something else. But still in all, it's a compassionate, loving, not hating, not divisive, source of comfort, calm, peace, and love. All the religions are the same with that. So I guess that was what was on my mind today. And I want to invite you to really reflect on what I've said here. I know it's a long video. I just decided it's late. It's not that late. It's only 9:15. It just feels late to me because it was a long day. I cried a lot in synagogue today, so that was tiring. And then I made the holiday foods, and Sarah and Jess came over. We missed Rebecca, of course, but Sarah and Jess came over, and we had kugel and bagels, Jersey bagels that I brought back from my trip, and lox, and it was very, very lovely. But it was also exceedingly poignant of missing the holiday celebrations that we had from the time Howie and I met. We celebrated the holidays, and there was never a time that we didn't do that in our lives together and in the lives of our family. So I really appreciated that Sarah and Jess came and hung out here, and we just had our dinner and chatted and connected as family. We're working like the Dickens to get Rebecca out here, so if you know her, feel free to pressure her. Anyway, my friends, today, not taking living for granted. not taking living for granted. It's just as possible that I could have been one of those 2 people who were killed today. I'm not saying this to be hyperbolic or to upset anyone in my family. I'm saying this because this is our truth. This is what we're living. And this is what we're living on every continent. There's a lot more to say about this, but I think I'm just going to leave it here. As always, if you watch this video, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my reflections, and I really always do appreciate your comments because it shows connection. It shows that you care and that you have compassion for another soul, and I'm grateful for that. All right, my friends, take good care.